Emma Parker had always been a woman who felt things deeply, even when she tried not to show it. She lived in a quiet Seattle suburb with her husband, Mark. In a neighborhood where every yard looked neatly trimmed, every street felt familiar, and every day felt almost the same. At 41, she had the kind of life many people might call stable, maybe even ideal. But inside, she felt something small and restless, something she didn't fully understand. She never imagined that a simple moment by the kitchen window would push her life into a direction she wasn't prepared for. It started on a warm, breezy Tuesday afternoon. Emma was making coffee, the smell filling the house the way it always did when she needed a little comfort. She glanced out the window and saw a moving truck parked across the street. Their neighbor's nephew, Ethan Carter, had arrived for the summer. She didn't know him yet, but she could see him from a distant stall, energetic. The kind of young man who moved with a confidence that came naturally at 20-5. He lifted boxes with ease, talked and laughed with people passing by, and seemed to carry some sort of bright energy with him. The kind that made people feel young again just by watching. Emma didn't stare for long. In fact, she tried to look away quickly. But even that brief moment sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Not discerno, just a spark. A reminder of a time when she felt different, lighter, more alive. And she thought she kept that reaction completely hidden. But Mark saw everything. He always did. He walked into the kitchen, placing his keys on the counter. "You're quiet," he said gently, noticing the way she looked out the window. Emma forced a small smile. "I'm fine. Just watching the neighbors move in." Mark didn't question her, but she felt his eyes stay on her for a moment longer than usual, as if he sensed something she didn't want to admit to herself. She loved her husband. She respected him. They had built a life together, marked with routines, memories, soft laughter, and 1,000 small moments. But somewhere along the way, as life became filled with bills, long workdays, tired mornings, and silent evenings, Emma felt a tiny piece of herself fade into the background. She didn't feel unwanted, just unnoticed. Not by him, but by the world. And she didn't know how to talk about it. The next time she saw Ethan was 2 days later. She was walking back from the mailbox when he smiled at her from the driveway. It wasn't flirtation, not even close, just the open, friendly smile that young people give without thinking. "Hey," he said. "I'm Ethan. I think your neighbor mentioned you live across the street." "Yes, I'm Emma," she replied, surprised by how warm her voice sounded. "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Thanks. I hope I'm not disturbing anyone with all the moving around." "No, not at all. It's good to have new faces around here." He smiled again, and for a moment she felt something inside her shift, like the soft turning of a page. Not attraction. Something more complicated. A feeling of being seen just for a second after a long time of feeling invisible. When she got home, she found Mark fixing a drawer in the kitchen. He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "Meet the new neighbor." "Yes," she said quietly. He nodded, his jaw tightening just slightly. She knew him well enough to read the emotion behind that small, subtle movement. Not jealousy, not anger, just awareness. And that made her heart ache. That night while they were eating dinner, Mark cleared his throat. "You've seemed different lately," he said. "Is something bothering you?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I'm just tired, that's all." But even she knew the excuse didn't sound honest. Mark didn't push. Instead, he gave her that patient, steady look he'd always had. The look that told her he understood more than she wanted him to. The next week moved fast. Work deadlines, errands, small household tasks, everything blended together as usual. But that restless feeling inside Emma continued to grow. It wasn't about Ethan specifically. It wasn't even about romance. It was about the version of herself she had quietly lost over the years. She couldn't remember the last time she felt truly vibrant or exciting. Most of her days passed in routines so familiar she could almost sleepwalk through them. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't fully happy either. She felt like someone living in the outline of her own life instead of the center of it. One Friday afternoon, a small moment changed everything. A package had been delivered to their house by mistake. Emma walked it over to the neighbor's porch, where Ethan was adjusting a bicycle wheel. "Hey, this was left at our door," she said, holding the box. "Oh, I've been looking for that," he said, hopping up from where he sat. "Thanks so much. You're a lifesaver." Said it with genuine appreciation, and something about that sincerity made her feel unexpectedly warm. "You bike a lot?" she asked. "Almost every day," he replied. "Helps clear my mind. And honestly, I just love feeling the wind. Makes me feel like I'm actually moving." His words hit her harder than she expected. She couldn't remember the last time she felt like she was moving in her own life, really moving. They talked for a few minutes about Seattle weather, nearby parks, and how he was still adjusting to the neighborhood. Nothing personal, nothing inappropriate, just simple conversation. But when she turned to walk home, she caught a glimpse of something she didn't expect. Mark standing at their window. Watching, she froze. He didn't look hurt, didn't look suspicious. He just looked thoughtful, almost sad. When she stepped inside, he didn't ask questions. He didn't say anything. He just brushed past her to put his jacket away. She felt something twist in her chest. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying everything in her mind. Not because she felt guilty, she hadn't done anything wrong, but she felt exposed, as if Mark saw something in her she wasn't ready to face. Over the next few days, the tension grew without either of them speaking about it. Emma tried to act normal, making breakfast, doing chores, talking about work, but she could feel Mark observing her more closely than before. When she glanced out the window toward Ethan's house, she quickly looked away, worried Mark might see and misunderstand. But he already understood, more than she realized. One evening, she found him sitting on the back porch, staring into the fading sunset. She sat beside him, unsure of what to say. After a long silence, Mark said quietly, "You seem different when he's around." Her breath caught in her throat. "Mark, he held up a hand. "I'm not accusing you of anything." His voice was soft, tired, honest. "I just noticed things." Emma looked down at her hands. "I don't have feelings for him. I don't want anyone else." "I know," Mark said. "I know that." He let out a long exhale. "But I also know when someone I love is longing for something they don't know how to talk about." His words were gentle but piercing. They sank deep into her heart, bringing tears she didn't want to show. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she whispered. "I just miss feeling something. Not because of him specifically, but because I feel like I've disappeared, and I don't know how to come back." Mark's voice softened even more. "You haven't disappeared. You're right here." But Emma shook her head, unable to agree. She felt too lost, too unsure of herself. And yet, beneath all the confusion, one truth remained. She didn't want Ethan. She wanted to feel alive again. She wanted to feel like the version of herself she used to be, hopeful, full of spark, full of light. But before she could even begin to figure out how to reclaim that part of herself, something unexpected happened. Something she never saw coming. Something that would change everything. Between her and Mark Hand, test the very foundation of their marriage, and it all started the moment the doorbell rang the next morning. The next morning, Seattle woke under a soft drizzle. Rain tapped gently against the windows, turning the street slick and shiny. Emma Parker sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee, trying to shake the restless thoughts that had kept her awake most of the night. Her mind wandered back to the events of the previous week, the brief encounters with Ethan, the spark of life she had felt, and most of all, the quiet, knowing presence of her husband, Mark. She loved Mark. She had always loved him. Yet she couldn't deny the inner turmoil that had started quietly, almost unnoticed, until now. Ethan hadn't done anything to provoke it. It wasn't about him. It was about Emma realizing that she still longed for excitement, attention, and feeling alive in ways that had nothing to do with infidelity. She missed herself, the young, vibrant version of Emma who had once been fearless, who had once chased her dreams without hesitation. The doorbell rang. Her stomach fluttered with a strange mixture of anticipation and caution. She set down her mug and walked to the door. Standing there, dripping from the rain, was Ethan. He carried a small package, soaked in spots from the drizzle, and gave her a sheepish smile. "Hi," he said, brushing a wet strand of hair from his forehead. "Mark said I could bring this over. Looks like it fell near the curb." Emma stepped aside to let him in. "Of course. Come in, you'll catch a cold." She grabbed a towel from the rack, handed it to him, and watched as he wiped his hair and jacket. His presence made her heart race in a way she couldn't explain. Not romantic, not inappropriate. Just a reminder of how easily life could stir emotions she hadn't felt in years. "Thanks," Ethan said, smiling at her. "I didn't expect to have to trek through the rain to get this." "No problem," Emma replied, feeling a warmth she hadn't realized she needed. There was something in his kindness, his openness, that reminded her she was still capable of being noticed, that she still mattered. They stood awkwardly for a moment, neither wanting to overstep, neither wanting to leave. Then Ethan spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Emma said, curious and cautious at the same time. "Are you happy?" The question hit her like a small, sudden wave. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't teasing. It was simple, honest, and profound. She blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't been asked that in years, not like this. Not with such sincerity. Emma shook her head slightly. I don't know. I think I'm trying to be." Ethan didn't push her. He just nodded as if he understood the weight of her words. His eyes weren't judgmental. They were calm, patient, attentive. For a fleeting moment, he felt comforted by someone noticing her pain without judgment. Before she could respond further, she heard the familiar sound of keys jingling in the front door. Her heart skipped. Mark. Ethan straightened. "I should go," he said, giving her a respectful nod. "Thanks again for letting me in." Emma felt a pang of disappointment as he left. It wasn't about Ethan. It was about the conversation, the brief chance to be seen, to be acknowledged. She closed the door and leaned against it, sighing. Mark walked in moments later, shaking off his umbrella. "Oh," he said, noticing Ethan had been there. "Everything okay?" Emma nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "Yes, he just dropped something off." Mark studied her face carefully. His eyes were calm but searching, the kind of look that made her feel both exposed and safe at the same time. "You can talk to me, you know," he said quietly. Emma's throat tightened. "About what?" "About the things you miss, the things you crave. I see it in you. I've always seen it." She hesitated, unsure if she could admit the truth aloud. "Mark, it's not him," she whispered finally. "It's not about Ethan. I miss feeling like I matter, like I'm alive in a way I used to be." Mark stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Emma, I know. I've seen it for a while. And it's okay. You don't have to hide it from me." She felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt the weight of her inner restlessness start to lift. She had feared judgment, but Mark didn't judge. He simply understood. I feel invisible sometimes," she admitted. "Not because of you. You're always here. I love you. But I miss the excitement, the feeling of being noticed, of being alive in the world." Mark's voice softened. "You've never been invisible to me. Maybe life got busy. Maybe we both forgot how to keep seeing each other in the ways that matter. But you're still the same person I fell in love with. And I want to make sure you feel alive again. With me." She looked up at him, her eyes filling with tears she hadn't planned to shed. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said. "And if someone younger made you realize what you've been missing, then that's just life reminding us both that we're still human, still capable of longing, still capable of love." Emma felt a rush of relief, gratitude, and something deeper. She realized she didn't need Ethan to feel alive. She needed herself. And she needed Mark, her partner, her friend, the man who had always seen her in ways no one else could. They sat together in the living room, rain tapping softly against the windows, and talked for hours. Not about jealousy, not about temptation, not about guilt, but about dreams, passions, fears, and what it meant to truly see one another again. For the first time in years, they talked like they did when they were newly married, with curiosity and wonder. Eager to rediscover each other, Mark suggested small changes, small ways to reconnect. Date nights, weekend walks, trying new hobbies together, even sharing thoughts they normally kept to themselves. Emma felt a spark she hadn't realized she'd been missing in excitement. Born not from a fleeting crush or a passing attraction, but from connection, understanding, and the quiet thrill of being seen and appreciated. Days turned into weeks, and Emma noticed the shift in herself. She carried a lighter step. She smiled more. She laughed freely again, not at anyone in particular, but because she felt the joy of life returning. And Mark noticed it too. He didn't just see the surface. He saw the small details, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she loved, the way she lingered longer over simple pleasures, the way her presence seemed brighter, more vibrant. Ethan continued to be around the neighborhood, but their interactions remained casual and friendly. Emma realized that the spark she had felt wasn't about him. It had been about remembering who she was and acknowledging the parts of herself she had neglected. Ethan had been a mirror, reflecting back the vitality she thought she had lost. Mark didn't act jealous. He didn't forbid interactions or act distant. Instead, he encouraged honesty, patience, and reflection. He became her safe space, the person she could share her fears, desires, and doubts with, without judgment. And in return, she offered him her renewed attention, appreciation, and love, knowing now that longing didn't always mean dissatisfaction. Sometimes it simply meant a reminder to reconnect with oneself and with the person who mattered most. One quiet Sunday morning, Emma and Mark walked together through a local park. The air crisp with the early signs of fall. Leaves rustled underfoot, and sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting soft golden light across the path. They held hands, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about everything and nothing. "Do you ever think about how easy it is to lose yourself?" Emma asked quietly, watching a group of children chase a frisbee nearby. "All the time," Mark replied, "but it's never really lost. Not if you're willing to find it again." Emma squeezed his hand. "I feel like I'm finding myself again. Slowly, but for real this time. I've noticed," he said, smiling. "And I'm right here. Not just noticing, but helping you. We're in this together." She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a contentment she hadn't known in years. It wasn't excitement born of newness or novelty. It was a deeper, steadier joy, the kind that comes from connection, understanding, and trust. That the rain returned later that day, soft and steady, tapping against the windows of their home. Inside, they prepared dinner together, laughing over small mistakes, sharing stories, and planning the week ahead. Emma realized that life didn't need sparks from someone younger to feel alive. She had Mark, she had herself. And together they could bring back the thrill, joy, and intimacy that had always been possible, just in ways they had forgotten to nurture. By the end of the evening, Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had been reminded of her own strength, her own desire, and the depth of her marriage. She realized that longing, when acknowledged, could lead not to temptation, but to growth, to reconnection, and to rediscovering love in ways that were steady, meaningful, and enduring. She stood by the window, looking at the wet streets glistening in the light of street lamps. Somewhere in the distance, she imagined Ethan walking home, unaware of the lessons he had unwittingly taught her. But that was okay. He had been part of the journey, a small nudge reminding her that she was still alive, still capable of feeling, still capable of love. Mark joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "You feel different," he said, his voice warm and full of affection. "I do," she admitted. "I feel awake again. And we'll keep it that way," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Together." Emma smiled, closing her eyes, letting the warmth of the moment settle deep inside. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside, their love had grown stronger not because of what she had briefly craved, but because of honesty, understanding, and the courage to face her feelings without fear.